That was ripped up recently.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Saturday morning when you
Yeah.
came over to my house. No, it was just a club listing that was in the Guardian Guide, and it was the same form and start everything about it. The same, top line and everything was almost identical, and it was really infuriating. But it was, it was a point where I'd added my own knowledge to what I knew was their way of pitching their press release. I kind of decided that I possibly didn't have a leg to stand on, even though they'd incorporated my bits into what was the club's story, which was some idiot jumping a wall and falling into a canal. It's difficult where you can't really sort of pull up a plagiarism thing, but I was still very angry.
When I was ripping other people's work, ripping off, stealing their work, I was just trying to get the facts and all the specific knowledge I had. We have this local newspaper. He's really, no, he's not good, but he has this inside sources and everything, things he only has access to. I couldn't tell that on the radio. Everyone would know that I was stealing his work. So I would just stick to the facts. And if I had to refer to a source or something he had access to, I would say in the newspaper, and someone said that I had to do something like that, but at least I just give him credit.
Yeah.
What I thought was really interesting was there's an acceptance of it going on, and on a number of occasions I would complain to the editor about how my story had been ripped off, and he'd say, well, firstly, technically there's nothing you can do because all they've taken is quotes, and there's essentially in the public domain. Now, I think actually his understanding of public domain isn't quite correct, but his second point was probably more interesting in a sense. He said that this happens so often, and you will be doing it too, that for us to complain about it is, it's a bad idea really, because we'll be on the other side of the equation eventually. And I thought that was interesting because what it suggests is that this is an industry that eats itself repetitively, and in fact what you have is a network of journalists, all of whom are really contributing to an open source product, if I can use that expression.
But they want to copyright it now.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing, is that even though all this copyright exists, journalism has worked on a principle that a lot of news is just news.
Yeah.
It's just stuff that's said, and it can be regurgitated, and that's certainly been the attitude of journalists in the UK for a very long time. I don't think it's a new thing at all.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you have the Associated Press in America trying to control their product now, when in essence the Associated Press was a product that exists to be shared. So it's something of an irony that they should be taking that approach now.
You can copyright life, right?
Sorry?
It's life.
Well, that's, you can't copyright events, can you?
Yeah, or life.
So the fact that somebody said something isn't necessarily a copyrightable thing in and of itself.
And what if the person says, I said that, so I publish, I have to pay me.
And in fairness, when I was a reporter, I had no original thoughts or ideas. All I was doing was regurgitating things that people had told me.
Yeah.
And the best, the greatest piece of creativity that I would come up with was, maybe a pun in my first line, which probably wasn't worth copywriting anyway.
With so much information flying around, it's actually harder and harder to be original nowadays, because somebody out there has probably done it.
I don't think so. I think it's quite easy to.
Really?
Well, I have this theory I'm developing this model, and if you say that, you're just ruining it for me. Because I think that now you can trace back to the first thing that ever, within a timeline, you can track back to the first source, the first digital source at least, because everything now is.
And Google News prioritises that in its algorithms, doesn't it? The first report on something.
It's not accurate, but it works.
Because there's so much news, though, it's hard. It probably would happen, but now we can see it. We can see what everybody is doing, thinking, reading. That you think, I've had this idea.
Yeah,
Someone else is
like
on
the
top.
first picture of the airplane in the Hudson River. It's not the first picture; it's the
No.
second one.
Absolutely.
It's the second one, but it was credited as the first picture. But it's
First
not.
broadcast picture.
Yeah, it was, and but it's traceable. You can, because everything has its own. It's recorded. It has its own records and its own data attached to it regarding when it was published, where it was published, who linked to it.
I think
So
we
it's
should-
measurable.
I think we should be careful about you know, it said emphasising or overemphasising the value of being the first,
Mm.
because particularly in the news environment that we exist in now, being first isn't that useful necessarily. What's important is having a good presentation of the facts.
Yeah.
I mean, a good example of that is if you look at Sky News and BBC News, and in fact ITN as well. Sky are consistently first to the event. They will always get their cameras
First
there
for news,
first,
yeah.
Yeah. Which is great. But I know a lot of people don't watch Sky News, and they don't watch Sky News partly because that's what Sky News' emphasis is. They try to get to the event
They're not
first.
standing around.
Yeah, and then they get things wrong.
It's
And-
true. It's
and-
flash first, check
Yeah,
later,
yeah.
isn't it?
And do you want your news to be rushed? Do you want to be? Do you want to know
I think-
first,
yes.
or do you want to know about things 30 seconds later, but with more with more evidence
no,
to
you see,
support
I
that?
want to know.
I know,
I
but
prefer,
a
I
lot of
prefer to know
people-
it straight away.
Absolutely, and that's a choice that a lot of people make, but an awful lot of other people choose not to make that choice. They still go for a product that gets their second, which is BBC News.
Quality over speed.
Well, yeah.
I think journalism is changing because of that. Mostly, there's one thing that nobody can actually steal from you. That's your perspective.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are more and more journalists who actually put some of their perspective, so that if somebody takes the information, they only have the raw facts.
Yeah.
So the people, he offers more to the people. That's one thing. And the second thing is that in print press, traditional press, you aren't really obligated to quote a source. I mean, it was like you could just say according to our sources, to some sources,
Yes.
But in the online, you have linking. And many online newspapers, I mean traditional newspapers who have online as well, they haven't learned the linking part. But
They don't want to.
part.
They know how
They
to
don't
do it,
want
but they
yes,
want to.
but
Yeah,
the ones
it's
that
true.
actually use internet, I mean really use it, they link. So I think it's a step.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's a couple of points here. First, I'm going to talk about some research into the whole idea of the short bites and updates, ironically from Associated Press. We're kind of moving into presentation now as well, talking about perspective, talking about the importance of good presentation. So we're kind of talking about production. So I'd like to explicitly move the discussion into that area.